What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Friday edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones, hashtag BYP. Appreciate everyone subscribing to the channel on YouTube. It's growing exponentially, and we're getting that way because of our great guest and our NFL correspondent, our insider, our good friend, Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us on this Football Friday edition from our good friends over at Played Against Sports and Scoots Liquors. All right, so, it's crazy, right? I'm texting you the other day. I'm like, hey, man, that was a pretty good preview that we did with the AFC North. And then, boom, we talk about these quarterbacks being healthy, and Burrow turns around with the calf strain yesterday. And that was the story of the day because think about it. He's in line for a monster contract. I'll get into the numbers in a moment with you, Lloyd. But, man, that would have totally changed the complexion of the NFL, the AFC, and certainly that division if he's out for an extended period of time.
Immediately I started seeing all the tweets and these Bengals fans that were really afraid about what was going on with Burrow, and it didn't look good when they carted him off. But
No.
ends up being a calf strain. Hopefully, it's nothing that's going to linger, and the team can continue. And you talk about a preview. Cincinnati, they won this division last couple of years, so you have to put them in number one in this division. But it's going to be interesting to see how they grow from this. Obviously, they're at Cleveland week one, and then they have Baltimore. So, these are two divisional games right off the bat, and they need their starting quarterback.
Yeah, think about this contract, right? 4 years, 36 million, 23 million signing bonus. 2021, he's recovering from that torn ACL and MCL in his left knee, ended his rookie season in 2020, had the ruptured appendix, right? You're still looking at Higgins, Jamar Chase, those extensions on their rookie deals. Now, Higgins is going to be eligible for a new deal. Can't talk. I should say Chase can't talk until his third season ends, which is this season ultimately. But think about these numbers: 168 catches, 2,500 yards, 22 touchdowns. Point being, if you're Joe Burrow, you need all these players on the field, the offense. Burrow is going to get paid. And the reason I bring it up is because what happens prior to yesterday's incident, Justin Herbert signs that monster contract, highest paid player in NFL history. So by that contract being signed, Burrow now, you've got your talking point, so to speak. I mean, you're talking 262.5 over 5 years. I pulled these numbers. 133.7 million is fully guaranteed. 193 million is an injury guaranteed. And then out of that total of 262, 218 million guaranteed. I mean, it's broken down as I kind of mentioned it, but if you're Burrow, you're like, damn, that's a lot of friggin' coin. And if you're Justin Herbert, you realize that the Chargers now, he is that face of that franchise going forward with that monster contract.
That's Q, and you're seeing these young quarterbacks get their money, and we talked about them being a marquee position, and teams are going to build around these quarterbacks, and they're their guys. And you saw Jalen Hurts get his contract. Now you talk about Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow is going to be next. I saw some guys joking that he shouldn't even step foot on a training camp or a preseason
Agreed.
game. You know, uh, you have to wonder if you're him. That's a lot of money. It's his future, and you don't want to risk a situation where he gets hurt and then the whole
Yep.
dynamic of his career arc changes. So, these young guys are going to build their team around them, we know the salary cap went up this year, but they're taking up a huge chunk of their team's cap, so they're going to be the number one priority. And you talk about the Bengals. Their receiving core is just spectacular. They had 25 touchdowns last year, the most in the NFL out of all the receivers. And they've got a variety of guys to spread the ball around too. So hopefully Joe Burrow gets healthy and he's able to move forward. But it's going to be interesting to see how this thing turns out.
You think he'll match the numbers that we just see with Justin Herbert? I mean, think about the contracts. Jalen Hurts with his contract, Herbert now. I mean, it's astronomical. You're talking about faces of the franchise. You're talking about all pro level MVP caliber, perennial MVP candidates in these quarterbacks. I mean, my goodness, absolutely, it's crazy. I mean, I think if I look at I guess the ascending quarterbacks, right? I mean, Burrow and Justin Herbert, they're right there. You can't go wrong with those two. I mean, Hurts is obviously, or we can get into that conversation down the road, but the point is, you're seeing the money now being spent because the quarterback position, it's the premier position in all the sports. I don't care what anyone tells me. They touch the ball. They're under center. They're the face of the franchise. And if you're Cincinnati, you're right. To your point, if I'm Joe Burrow, I'm not stepping on that field until I get a deal done. Now he turned around and said, I'm going to have patience with it. But I think that's just, player speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure his agent was telling him, look, don't push it. We got to get this deal done. And it's crazy, Q. We're talking about quarterbacks getting 45, $50 million a season. And it all started a lot with two guys who you wondered, did they really deserve it? Deshaun Watson coming off his mess in Houston. He didn't have a great season last season. And then, the big elephant in the room, Kyler Murray. He got that huge contract. His knee's all messed up. I'm already hearing that he may not be on the same page with Gannon's new staff that's there. And once you sign these big contracts, you are stuck with these quarterbacks, and that could be, it could be a big sticking point going forward for a team.
Yeah, and conversely, the position that's not getting paid is the running back position. Saquon Barkley had the epiphany. Yeah, the epiphany was get your ass in camp, sign your 1-year deal for 10.1 with your 900,000 in incentives. I mean, look, this is what happens when you have an agent and then a guy that handles marketing / branding. You've got, you're cross-pollinating. It's a conflict of interest. You got this guy talking to your ear, you got this guy talking to your ear, and then boom. I mean, at the end of the day, you don't fool with a man's money, but he had no choice. He had zero leverage whatsoever. And the bottom line is the Giants are a better team when he's on the field. We already know that. I'm reading all these reports that Darren Waller is having a ridiculous last couple of days, and I'm wondering, is he that good, or does the secondary of the Giants really suck right now? But again, we can get into that later on. But Saquon really had no choice here. He signs the 1-year, $10.1 million deal, the offer. And, in hindsight, he's got to put up some big numbers. Who knows what the Giants are going to do? And, 27, 28 years of age, is he going to get a monster contract if he walks? I just don't know. But I believe he's not going to carry the football as much as we've seen in years past, because I believe this offense is going to be geared towards throwing the ball down the field. So, again, I think maybe you just use him judiciously. He's still an unbelievable weapon, but ultimately, Lloyd, he just had no leverage in this situation.
He's betting on himself, and you're right, dude. Running backs, it is what it is. That's what Saquon tweeted right after all this happened with his contract. And, he's going to work through it, and he has the agents, he has his family involved, but he's a very smart young man. And I think he's betting on himself. He wants his opportunity. But, you see Austin Eckler try to call this running back Zoom summit, and it looks ridiculous. I mean, these guys, we know first and foremost in the NFL, the owners and the front offices have the hammer. They're going to kind of dictate the terms of everything because these contracts are guaranteed. And then you talk about the running back position, they just look at it as kind of disposable, that they can get a guy later in the draft or an undrafted free agent. You don't have to draft a guy in the top 10 picks that you saw Saquon go and Ezekiel Elliott. It showed you as their careers have progressed, these teams have not won championships, and they just feel that they want to win behind a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, and that leads us Dalvin Cook visiting the Jets. Look, he's a Florida guy. Is he going to sign with the Miami Dolphins? I mean, right now, to sign with the Jets minus 200, with the Pats plus 400, with Miami plus 500. I mean, you don't have to worry about, no sales tax down there in Miami.
Yeah, it's a lot better situation. No state sales tax there in Texas, so a lot of people want to go play there.
So, I mean, look, I don't know if is it the norm for a player who hasn't met with a team yet? He goes on Good Morning Football and basically says, yeah, chances aren't going to sign with the Jets, to paraphrase. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, you're kind of using that for a little bit of leverage. All right, all of a sudden Miami's interested. Well, how much more can you throw at me? So I get the game that's being played there. By the way, can we get into the Jets for a moment and Sean Payton, who is such a friggin' jackass? I mean, this guy is such a friggin' clown, man. I'm sorry. All the years they had great offenses with New Orleans, they turned around, they won one friggin' Super Bowl. They've had so many choke jobs in the playoffs. So he decides, you know what? Let me go on the record right now talking about being the new head coach of Denver and letting Russell Wilson cook and then blasting our guy, right? Blasting our guy. I mean, look, I blasted Nathaniel Hackett last season as well. We all did, right? Unfortunately, bad spot. But, saying it's one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. And 20 dirty hands. I mean, look, it's rare for a head coach to go out and rip another guy. I mean, you're basically tap dancing on this guy's grave. But the irony is this right now, right? Hackett's the new OC with the Jets. I think Sean Payton did that. This is me. You tell me if I'm right or wrong. I think Payton did it to deflect on the crappy season that Russell Wilson had and basically take all the pressure off Russell Wilson, right? Let's not focus on Russell Wilson. Let's focus on me with these comments and try to get in the Jets' head. And oh, by the way, we'll see you in early October. But man, I get defending the player, but Sean Payton, have a little decorum here. I mean, it's just kind of classless coming out and ripping on a fellow head coach, right? Whatever happened to the coaching fraternity?
Yeah, Q, it was interesting. I thought you immediately. I'm like, is this guy going overboard? And he probably is. I know. First and foremost, he's trying to defend his new position, and he's the head coach in the Denver Broncos, and they paid him a lot of money to bring that Super Bowl pedigree, and he's going to fix Russell Wilson and all this. And it's a lot in reality of the chicken and egg. Him and Drew Brees. Who made each other. He had Brees, and he really made him into he's kind of a no-name assistant underneath of Bill Parcells a number of years, and he made his bones in Cincinnati with his quarterback, with the Saints with the quarterback. So I think he's trying to defend Russell Wilson, as you were saying, in a roundabout way, but he went maybe a little too far. That's kind of stuff you say, when maybe it's there at the coaches convention or all these guys are around each other, but not in front of the cameras. And he sure laid it out there. And as you said, the Jets are at Denver week 5. So that's going to be real exciting, that game. That's going to be a rivalry game. They're probably going to play that clip over and over again. And Nathaniel Hackett, Nathaniel Hackett has his guy too. He's got Rodgers there, and they work together very well with the Packers, and they're going to be, frothing at the mouth. So that's going to be a rivalry game. It's going to be a lot of bulletin board material. But, yeah, I thought he went a little over the top in those comments.
Yeah, and it doesn't underscore the fact that Russell Wilson had a horrible season last year. I get it. First season, new team, different offense, 16 touchdowns, his lowest since 2016. He had the picks, I think his second highest of his career. He was sacked 55 times. So, again, we want to sit there and blame Hackett, but you can also look at maybe the offensive line being crappy and you having a quarterback that's running for his life. That was a league high. Yeah, I think it's a bad look, man. And Hackett is a Rodgers guy. That's Aaron Rodgers' guy. Now, do they need any more motivation? No, I think you let the play, on the field speak for yourself. But Sean Payton won one friggin' Super Bowl, and he doesn't win that Super Bowl unless he really pulls out one of the all-time ballsiest onside kicks to start a half, right? I mean, think about it. All the years they were winning 12 games, 13 games, they had horrible playoff losses. So, yeah, he's starting to get a little, when he was on a little too Grudenish for me. And I'm not a fan of that crap.
Yeah, a lot of these guys, once they win that Super Bowl, they think they know everything. We've seen that with a couple coaches, and they have that kind of arrogance around themselves. And you wonder, maybe they win 3 Super Bowls, and kind of back up the big talk.
Yeah.
But you're talking about New Orleans and their failures all those years. It seemed like every year they were going 7-9. So it takes a lot, and Russell Wilson, he was always one of my guys. He was my son's favorite player. He had the jersey and all that stuff, the fat head in his room, but he just did not perform last year, as you said. He was terrible. He's tentative in the pocket. They can talk about the scheme. They can talk about Javonte Williams getting hurt, and the weapons just didn't kind of fit. Some of the receivers were in and out of the lineup. But he just did not look the same. He did not want to run the football in key situations, and they lost a lot of games. So, the Walton family who bought the team, they're bringing a lot of money for that Walmart. Walmart people bringing that money there, and they want to see things fixed in Denver. So they jettisoned John Elway, get him out of the front office, and they have a whole new front office there, new head coach, and we'll see if this thing works out. But that's a very competitive division.
Well, that's it. 100%. That division is friggin' stacked, right? I mean, if you go up and down and look at that division right now, but I think Wilson, look, he's not the same player. And you start to see ghost footsteps in the pocket. You're sacked 55 times. That's going to make any quarterback tentative. No quarterback, even the great ones, the Rodgers, the Bradys, the Mannings, nobody likes to get hit. No quarterback likes to get hit. But you're sacked 55 times. You got to address the offensive line. You got to fix the offensive line. And look, I didn't see the arm strength. I didn't see the deep ball. As you alluded to, I thought he was very indecisive in the pocket. You know, a lot of times Russell Wilson put the foot down, take off and run on 3rd and 6, pick up 7, 8 yards, keep the drive alive, move the chains. I didn't see that. Some very questionable decisions in the pocket, tentativeness. I look, we can talk game plan and the type of game planning that Daboll set the table and the tone for the Giants week 1 when they decided to go for 2 on the road against Tennessee. Hackett set the tone early in the season when they decided to kick that long field goal. You just made the move for Russell Wilson. You signed, what was it? 100, 2, 3, whatever the hell the contract was, and you took the ball.
And they all those picks too. Don't forget they traded all those picks to Seattle, and Seattle was glad to get him out the door. Let's not forget that him and Pete Carroll, they were done. You know, that relationship was severed, and it's because some of the plays that he was not making there, and then he goes to Denver. You think, all right, he's changed environment. It's going to be the great elixir, and this is a division where they're throwing the football all over the field.
100%.
But he was not the same guy, and to be honest with you, he was probably the worst quarterback in that division.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He didn't have a good year. And if you're going to put all your eggs in that basket and you're looking at that division right now, I mean, my goodness. I mean, just Kansas City's Kansas City. They're defending Super Bowl champs. The Chargers just gave Herbert all that money. You know, we can talk about the Raiders. I don't think the Raiders are going to be as bad as people think. Again, you know, we kind of talked a little bit about them, but as we continue with our previews and everything, and then you got Denver 5-12, and they couldn't score to save their lives last year. I mean, they were minus 72 point differential. So Sean Payton can say everything he wants, but if the Denver Broncos turn around and they start the season, let's just say 1-5, I mean, they open against the Raiders, Washington, on the road against Miami, Chicago, the Jets, on the road against Kansas City, Green Bay, Kansas City. Wow. So the schedule makers, they actually are doing them kind of a favor. You're getting rid of Kansas City early on in the season. You don't have to worry about going on the road and playing them late in the year with perhaps, you know, a wild card at stake. But if this team starts off 2-4, 2-5, and Russell Wilson has 5 touchdowns and 7 picks, everyone's going to look back to Sean Payton's comments. So, all right, we'll see how that plays out. I want to get to a couple of injuries as well. Let's go with the 49ers and really an update on Purdy. Return to practice. They said the arm, you know, by all counts, looking good, feeling good. Right now, they're sitting at minus 165 to win the West, plus 900 to win the Super Bowl. 11 wins last year. They covered in 5 of them. So you think about this team. I mean, they've got good nucleus. They've got offensive weapons, as we know. I don't think you're going to ask that quarterback to duplicate what he did last year. I think it's going to be tough to do. But if you're a 49ers fan, I almost get the sense you've just quietly gone about your business, even though some of the players, i.e. Debo, can't let go of the NFC Championship. And conversely, the Eagles can't let go of losing the Super Bowl. Still complaining about the officiating in the field. But the 49ers, if you were to say right now, Q on paper, give me the top team in the NFL, the top team in the NFC, on paper, offense and defense, how is it not the 49ers with a healthy Purdy? And this is no disrespect to the Eagles. It's not a disrespect to the Eagles, but come on, man, the 49ers were not playing with a full deck last year. They just weren't in that playoff game.
Right. I still have to put the Eagles a little ahead of them, and that's because of the quarterback. We want to see Ken Purdy come back from this injury, but you do talk about the weaponry that, you know, Shanahan can deploy for the Niners. It's ridiculous. They're loaded at receiver. They got good running backs. Their offensive line's very good. And then defensively, yes, they lose D'Amico Ryans and he goes to Houston, but, you know, you still got Nick Bosa and and Fred Warner and the rest of those guys to build upon. So a very dangerous team. I still think that they're going to win that division. You know, the division's still kind of in flux. When you look at the Rams, they're still kind of rebuilding, come back from injury. We talked about the Cardinals earlier, who we expect may be one of the worst teams in NFL, and Seattle. You know, did Geno get lightning in a bottle last year? So I still think the Niners will win their division. And when you talk about it conference-wise, yes, I'd have to put them right up there with the Eagles, 1A, 1B.
Yeah, 13-4, ultimately 13-5, losing the NFC Championship. I mentioned those 11 wins, 5 covers. That was ATS. Garoppolo goes down. He plays in, what was it, 10, 11 games. Purdy comes in, lights the world on fire. I mean, he really put together, managed the game. I know the old quarterbacks don't like to hear that expression, but they do have some weapons. I still believe you play that game with a healthy Purdy in Candlestick in San Francisco. I believe the 49ers, say if they play 10 times, they're going to win maybe 5 or 6. I think it's like 50-50. It's a heavyweight fight on paper. I like the 49ers, and I certainly still like the Eagles as well. All right, rounding out, Ramsey gets hurt. That's a big loss for the Miami Dolphins, right? Because they wanted to fix that secondary. You were looking at those corners, those DBs, that secondary. I don't know how much time he's going to miss, but you're hearing a lot of stuff coming out now with players going down, and all right, we have to figure out a way to, restructure how we're looking at training camp and OTAs. And hey, you can't be out there too long in the heat. Let's break it down a little more. I mean, where are we going with everything, right? Because players go down. Like, next is basically bubble wrap everyone, play in 60-degree weather, and we'll talk to you in September. I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah, Q, I talk to a lot of older players and work with those guys, and those guys just laugh, and they're also envious, of the amount of money these guys are getting, but also the CBA rules, they allow only so much time out
Yep.
in training camp. And it used to be 2-a-days, and Buddy Ryan had guys running up and down the field and throwing up, and he's saying, get back out there. And, that's just the way it was back in the day. But, you know, I don't know how much more they can do for these players, in terms of setting rules and how much they can do. You're going to see teams self-manage, I would say. They're going to give these younger guys more reps and make sure that their stars are ready for week one. Because yes, when they see a Jalen Ramsey, a guy who they've invested so much in, and he's not going to be able to be out there. That's a big loss for Miami. And then when you look at Miami, they're at the Chargers week one. Then they got to go to New England. Then they have Denver, and then they're at Buffalo. So it's a tough early start for them, and then they don't get their bye until week 10. So this team definitely, they want to get off the big jump. Stephen Ross, their owner, has put a lot of pressure on Chris Greer, their general manager, as well as last year McDaniel. Yes, everybody thought he was the new bright shiny toy in the National
Right.
Football League, but a lot of people are going to be gunning for them. And even though they have so many weapons there, Tyreek Hill and Waddle, and is two already. So a lot of expectations around this team, and losing Ramsey does not help.
Yeah, and we'll get into the AFC West next week. If you go to the YouTube channel, Rich Q, Lloyd and I breaking down AFC North, AFC South, AFC East, as well as the NFC. We'll save the NFC East for last. And then, of course, we'll do our divisional winners. We'll do a lot of playoff implications, predictions, player props as well, and Super Bowl winners. So, hey, it's just nice to get these players out there, right? But it's just the whole, even the offseason in the NFL is such a fluid situation, right? Because you mentioned the Zoom call, which, again, at the end of the day, I mean, I understand where these running backs are coming from, because they know the position is devalued. They understand that their window, remember years ago, it was 2 to 3 years and 3 to 5 years. And if you can play 5 to 7, right, then you're invested, you get your pension, you're set, you're okay. And they want to make the money. But I think it's falling on deaf ears is really my point, because unless you can prove to me that without a stud running back, you can't win, there's no need for this conversation. And this is not a slight or disrespect to that position. I mean, hell, I do the pod with Brandon Jacobs, right? So I get it. I understand where he's coming from. He played the position at a high level for close to a decade. But you can win in the NFL with a very good defense, a good quarterback, good wide receivers, and a serviceable running game. The days of, you need a game-breaking wide receiver, you don't. You need shutdown, lockdown corners, defensive edge, right? Pass rushers, and a left tackle, and obviously a quarterback. That's how you win in the NFL.
And the days of Emmitt Smith carrying the Dallas Cowboys all the Super Bowl championships are over. And that offensive line, now they're teaching offensive linemen all the way from high school all the way up there. They're pass blockers first and foremost. So they're going to keep their quarterback clean, and they want to get the points on the board. So you're right. the key positions, quarterback, left tackle, and then obviously on defense, you want that guy that's a pass rusher, that's going to be a disruptor, a Nick Bosa type. And then you got to have those corners shut things down. So this is what's valued in the National Football League. And I just don't see that changing anytime soon. Yes, these running backs, you kind of feel for them that they're kind of devalued. And you see veterans out there like Fournette and Cook. These guys haven't gotten contracts yet. But, it's just the game, the way it's being played today.
Yeah, 100% great stuff with the last thought on that. Of course, Lloyd Vance, our NFL correspondent, our insider, kind enough to join us on a Football Friday of Back Your Play with Q. Rich Quinones here. Give Lloyd a follow on social media at Lloyd Vance. We'll post this puppy up as well later today. Next week, AFC West. We'll see if these players can make it through a couple days without anyone getting nicked up. And then, man, we're turning around. It's going to be August. We've got preseason Hall of Fame, Cleveland Jets. And then we get into the snore that is the NFL preseason. And we try to break down one friggin' series. And oh my God, this guy looks great in shorts. He looks ripped. He looks shredded. Get me to September. Get me to September for some meaningful football. Can we do that?
Yeah, I know. And next time, I definitely want you and I to debate it. Someone asked me,
Yeah.
is Andrew Luck a Hall of Famer? And I'm like, And then that opens the door for all these quarterbacks that we talked about before, Don McNabb, Eli Manning, so
wow,
definitely something to debate.
come on now. Eli's got 2 rings. What are you slipping that in there for?
There it is.
Friday, get me all worked up.
He's HOF, in my opinion, too.
That nonsense. Yeah, we'll get into that next week as well, because that also opens up how are we looking at some of these players whose careers are cut short by injuries or early retirements, and Luck injuries and early retirement, right? It's that Terrell Davis type of debate. So, all right, I'll let that one slide, by the way, from you, my friend. We will do it again next week. Always appreciate you jumping on this edition of BYP Pal.
All right, Q, thanks for having me on.